Welcome back to Earth Station Trek, a show where we trek from the early days on NBC to the future on Paramount Plus and everywhere in between. I'm Charles Kelso, and it's my privilege to introduce the Earth Station Trek crew: Keith Johnson,
You never forget your first death.
Veronica Dashel,
Hi.
and joining us this week, the host of Jettison Pod, Vandy Beth Glenn.
Blindfolded saber fight.
Well, welcome back, Vandy Beth.
Thank you.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you for having me again.
You're metamorphosizing.
Yes, I've got a cat coming between me and my microphone.
Yeah. Vandy Beth has a cat with her, and Veronica has a dog. So long as they don't look at the screen, we're going to be okay. Keith, did you have any This Week in Trek this week?
Yeah, I got a couple real quick that I want to run through real fast. I found this pretty cool. I'm gonna do 3 dates here because this is all fascinating. I thought on the 10th of September, 1966, and on the 14th of September, 1966, and on the 16th of September, 1966. 3 different major sources of entertainment news reviewed Star Trek. TV Guide, Variety, and I'll give it the last one was the New York Times.
Okay.
They gave it overwhelmingly negative reviews.
It'll never last.
Yes. Now, the thing is, you could say New York Times is New York Times. You could dismiss it, as the place of Kathleen Hale and the highbrow, blah, blah, blah. And you could talk about Variety as a trade magazine. But TV Guide, it's hilarious. TV Guide said, the sky's not the limit for this show. It has doubtful impact. Another interview from Variety said that the Man Trap was pretty much a horrible space episode. And then my favorite, the New York Times says, and this is funny because it tells you what people were thinking. It reviewed the episode Charlie X, and they said this episode relies less on super duper gadgetry, but is associated with travel in the heavens normally than it does an astronautical soap opera. This soap opera suffers from interminable drag. TV's first hyper melodramatic show in orbit. They hated Charlie X. What I find funny, and for people who are younger, I wasn't quite old enough to have watched this when it first aired, but you have to put your mind in 1966. And
Right.
You hear this weird stuff about super duper gadgetry and soap operas in outer space. They really did want War of the Worlds. They really did want Flash Gordon. They didn't understand this show, and they thought it would never last. It's hilarious.
Some of the week one reviews of the Man Trap were equally negative, saying it's a monster story in space, and
Yeah.
I mean several of them. We were swapping some in the Earth Station Trek Facebook group. Pointed
Yes.
out the Playboy bunnies on the Enterprise, and that sort of thing, sort of mocking the uniforms and.
And now they do that at DragonCon in Bunny Hutch.
Well, hindsight is 2020.
Yes.
Some of their criticisms have some validity to them,
Mhm.
and it's really only in the fullness of time that we find them so mockable.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't have the
Absolutely.
benefit of watching this over and over since they were 10 years old. So to them it was.
Absolutely.
But it's interesting because to them
Yeah.
it was just a new TV show with an episode or two.
Right.
I think it's fascinating to see what people thought at the time.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And then 2 other real quick things on the 14th of September, 1936, Walter Koenig was born.
Awesome.
And I don't do a lot of birthdays, but that's a really critical one. And we were just talking about things. We were just talking about the fact I didn't even know this, that Walter Koenig, the story always was he was hired, yes, because he was young, yes, because he was supposed to fill that Beatles kind of thing. But this story that's been around for decades is that Russia complained mightily, saying, yeah, look at those Americans. They don't even want us in space in the future. And that they created Chekhov to appease Russia. And it turns out that's a lie. And I checked several interviews with Walter Koenig. I did not know that was a lie. It was made up by the suits.
Yeah.
That's a good story.
Right? It is a good story.
Yeah, really. And the last one, I was around for this. 17th of September, the 17th of September, 1976. NASA decided to name the first space shuttle the Enterprise after a campaign by tens and tens of thousands of write-in letters and calls to everyone from Paramount to NASA to the White House itself, which is amazing.
Absolutely.
They should have waited until one that was like a manned spacecraft.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. They got
Yeah.
the test glider, but yeah, I mean, still, I mean, it's not every TV show. There's no Jupiter 2 in NASA. You know, like
That's a
there's
good
no
point.
C-57D. You know, at the Enterprise, that's a distinction. That the Enterprise, you know, very few fictional spaceships didn't have. You know, very few NASA ships have been named after fictional spaceships. So
Right.
That's
That's
Star
a
Trek's
big
cap.
thing.
Yeah.
And I really hope they continue that in whatever our future in space is. I really hope that they actually keep naming an Enterprise every time we do whatever we do next.
I hope we do something next.
Good point. And that's This Week in Trek History. I agree.
Awesome. Well, if you're listening on the audio podcast, we'll take a quick break right here and promote a fellow ESO Network podcast show. But don't go away, because when we get back, we'll be talking about Star Trek Lower Decks. But before that, we're going to be talking about the new Star Trek anniversary special, as well as the first 2 episodes of Very Short Treks. So stay right there.
Vandy Beth, I see you. I see the expressions on your face.
And if you're watching with us live, we're going to continue on. So Veronica, you want to bring us back in with a spoiler warning?
Yeah, if you didn't watch this is your own fault.
Okay.
Okay.
That's spoilers. Yeah.
Spoilers.
First off, spoilers for Very Short Treks, and then it'll be spoilers for the latest episode of Star Trek Lower Decks and the Cradle of Vexilon. But let's start with the anniversary special.
Yeah.
Hosted by Jerry O'Connell, who I like.
Yes, I love Jerry O'Connell.
Yeah. And like I said last week, I'm glad that they had the foresight to film something, to have something,
Right.
you know, during the strike, because if they'd waited just a little bit, they wouldn't have been able to have anything.
Yeah.
So credit to them.
I would have been okay with that, actually.
Yes.
Yeah. So now that we've seen it, let's get into what they actually did.
Yeah, they completely ignored Prodigy when they talked about the animated series.
That's good.
They
Yes, they did.
used like a lot of their like backdrops were very Prodigy-y artwork.
You think so?
Yes.
Okay.
Especially the one right behind Jerry O'Connell. Very much reminded me of Prodigy.
Okay.
Very, very much.
Oh, interesting.
I didn't pick up on that. I felt like I like Jerry
either.
O'Connell,
Yes.
but I felt like the Jerry O'Connell segments, it felt like I was like in a hotel room at 2 a.m. watching Jerry O'Connell sell Star Trek.
Yeah. It was like a big advertisement.
Yeah, it had that kind of a feel. Like I feel like there's going to be an 800 number I can call at the end to find me some Star Trek.
Like you're at the Howard Johnsons in some small town, and
Right.
in the bar, and there's a dude trying to tell
Yeah.
jokes.
Yeah, it's like they didn't give him the script ahead of time and it was only a
Well,
teleprompter.
I don't know about that, but it did feel like a Star Trek ad, a 30-minute Star Trek ad to me.
For Discovery.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's fine. I like Discovery, so
Yeah.
I don't think we saw anything that we hadn't already seen.
Mm-mm.
But
Right.
yeah, I mean, that's the next thing after Lower Decks. I'm glad that they're promoting it.
Yeah.
Well, I looked it up. The 57th anniversary. There's no traditional gift, but the modern gift is either glass or a mirror.
Okay.
And so I guess a mirror would be a good gift if you're going to spend 20 minutes gazing at your own navel.
Vandy Beth, were you the one who posted something about how he kept staring off to the left or something weird like that? There was a weird profile.
No, it's just it was a 2-camera setup, and there was a moment early on where they went to camera B, but Jerry O'Connell was still looking off to the side. So my joke was that no, the director forgot to tell Jerry to turn to camera B, but I don't know, maybe that was on purpose, but
Maybe because you wouldn't think it's not the days like it's not going out live. You know, like they can.
Yeah.
Surely they've got footage from both cameras that they're editing together. So it seems like it would be a choice that someone made.
it was an odd choice then.
Yeah, the side of Jerry O'Connell's face talking. Maybe he thought, hey, people haven't seen the side of his face in a while.
Or maybe they were thinking, we have to make this interesting somehow.
This is my moment. My artistic flair will come through.
You know, I think given what I read online and our group and just other stuff, no matter how it turned out, I really do think, even for people who maybe didn't love it, I think the specter of prodigy was hanging over that in weird ways. I think even people who didn't go in there expecting to whatever have an attitude, it was just by not being mentioned. And I think that helps sour some people's experience, period. It's kind of like, I don't care what you're saying. Prodigy's not there, and that just feels false. And then even for someone like me, the little things we talked about if you went to the official Star Trek page, and the first thing that came up for Star Trek Day did not have Captain Kirk in the picture. It had, the newest stuff front and center. I don't care, like you, Charles, I don't care about promoting the new stuff, but it's weird if you take the old stuff and push them to the back. And I think those things made it feel more almost commercial and more focused only on our stuff, whereas Star Trek should be inclusive for everything that's come before. So I think little things like that kind of made people not love it as much as maybe they thought they would.
Yeah, I don't have any problem at all with them promoting the new stuff. I want them to promote the new stuff because I want people to watch it, and I want it to continue and be successful. And I like the new stuff. But for an anniversary, it does seem, I mean, like I said on our Facebook group, I guess time marches on, but it's weird for me to see an anniversary image with no Kirk or Spock.
Yeah, that's wrong.
That just was a little strange because they were the face of Star Trek for so long.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I don't have any problem with the folks that they had on there, but it is a little weird.
Yeah, it'd be like doing a dedication to history of the United States, and you show Zachary Taylor and Millard Fillmore instead of George Washington. I know, deep pool.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey,
I don't even know who those people are, but I'm assuming they're presidents at some point.
See, yeah.
All right. Before we get too far, usually Alan grabs the comments. So I've been negligent of our comments section.
All right, cool. So welcome everybody.
Real quick, I'm gonna go backwards.
Let's see if we found somebody who loved it.
Dan said they also claim that Trek inspired automatic sliding doors, which isn't true.
They did? I missed that.
Who claimed that?
I think it's on a special. Maybe when they're talking about innovations that Star Trek had inspired.
Oh.
Interesting. I didn't catch that one.
Maybe that was Jerry O'Connell going off script.
Maybe. Elaine said the only part I really enjoyed was the mini watch through of crazy bits with Tawny and Eugene.
That felt more genuine.
It felt like more genuine.
Yeah, it didn't feel like they were going off a script. It's like, okay, guys, you're watching this thing and just talk about it and be yourselves and do weird things and be hilarious.
Yeah, but they weren't hilarious.
So Vandy Beth, you didn't like much.
They were a little bit.
Huh?
No, there's really almost nothing about this that I did enjoy.
So almost nothing. So what little tiny piece did you enjoy?
Well, I did like a couple of moments in the thing with Tawny and Eugene. I like them. I like them busting on the Move Along Home episode of Deep Space Nine, but even there, I felt like that was thrown in there just to tee us up for this week's episode of Lower Decks.
I feel like that should be a special feature on like the Star Trek DVDs. Is have Star Trek actors like watching the shit, like have them watching Lower Decks and reacting, or have the Lower Decks guys watching Strange New Worlds and reacting.
That used to be a thing they would put on things, is the people watching it and them reacting as you watched it, and you watched it along with them.
In fact, they could put it on Paramount Plus, and I would watch it again.
Yeah,
and they would just get more streams.
Or even if they just put it on the DVD, then I'd also buy the DVD. I mean, we're gonna obviously already buy the DVD or the Blu-ray anyway. That's but and give people more reason to subscribe year round.
Yeah. Okay, so comments are moving. I already said that one. Dan said it's bad, like the myth that the first interracial kiss is in Plato's Stepchildren. It's not even the first interracial kiss in Trek. And there, I think, when they say interracial kiss, I think it's a shorthand for like a scripted interracial kiss between a Caucasian person and an African-American person on television. Because obviously there had been, kisses between folks who weren't of the same race on television before, I mean, on I Love Lucy, Lucy and Desi were married and playing married a couple, and that was, a decade earlier.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, it is notable the Plato Stepchildren kiss, and I'm glad that Star Trek has. I wish it was in a better episode, but and under better circumstances. But I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, so let's see if we can catch up real quick. Elaine said, like behind the sofa on the Doctor Who DVDs, which is talking about them watching people watch the show and react. to it.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I didn't get that one because I'm not deep on Doctor Who.
Yeah, they used to have a feature on VH1 that was like that. Like they would have the cast of Frasier remarking on an episode of Frasier. And that was about as fun as this thing was.
And then Matt Sputman said Anson Mount, the Millard Fillmore.
There you go. I'll bet Matt, I guarantee he's never been called that before.
Probably not. Yeah, that's probably a new one. I think we've coined that here this night.
Yes.
I was involved.
I'll post it on X and see what he says.
Yeah.
Make sure that's not the one that got assassinated. No, that was Garfield. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, Dan is specifying. He says Chapel and Uhura kiss before Chapel leaves to be with Dr. Corby, but I don't. That's not the same type of a kiss that they're talking about when they're talking about the regular kiss.
Somebody else said that online. I didn't go back and look. They didn't kiss on the lips, did they? I thought it was just a cheek. So I wouldn't call that a kiss. Yeah, not really. Not really. I wouldn't call that.
No.
Of course, talking about that kiss between Kirk and Uhura, I'm sure everybody here knows that the suits were terrified of that kiss, and they wanted it to be much, much less of a kiss on the mouth. But Nichelle Nichols and William Shatner intentionally kept screwing up the takes so that the only take that they could use was that one instead of all the other ones. They would cross their eyes and do all this other weird stuff. I know nowadays, in retrospect, it seems really stupid, but I used to work with a guy from West Virginia who was alive when that came out, and he said that his family was so pissed. They were literally talking about going down to the TV station, like, I don't know, burning it down or something like that.
Wow.
So we've come a long way.
People will still say they'll do that.
Right.
Back then, people were more likely to actually do that.
Right.
But people are insane.
Yeah. Back when people say people didn't get offended so easily.
Yeah. I mean,
when the people call people snowflakes or the snowflakes.
Yeah. There really was a time back then where the suits in New York or LA would have to go, how will this play in the South? Yeah. Because they're always worried about the South freaking out about something. And this was one of those times.
All right, well, enough of that. Let's move on to the very short treks. I'm the very short treks.
Charles,
only thing I'm glad is they were very short treks.
Charles,
they weren't
really good.
Charles, you like the MC who keeps introducing stuff that the audience is not laughing at. Everything you say, you're getting like, oh God.
Well, you know, Roger Ebert used to say that no good movie is ever too long and no short movie is ever short enough.
Oh, I've never heard that, but I like that.
Yeah. And these were very short treks, and yet they weren't short enough.
Yep.
Right.
One of the things in the puppetry that we do for
that.
is too short to suck.
Yeah, something they say in the puppet slam community is
too
short to suck. Keep your routine too short to suck. And these were not too short to suck.
Nope. Nope.
I mean, let's talk about them though. I mean, the first one, you had a captain. I don't think he was meant to be Captain Kirk, and he wasn't credited as Captain Kirk.
No.
Right.
And yet he was on the bridge with Spock.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, where Kirk usually sits.
And Maress and
yeah. Was Eric's there?
Yeah, Eric's was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Spock. Was Spock there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ethan Peck was playing Spock.
Yeah.
Which I thought worked pretty well.
Yeah.
As the animated series style Spock, I thought Ethan Peck was good.
Yeah.
I like starting with what I like the little retro styled the little intro they do, for all the Star Treks now.
That was cool. I was like, oh yeah, that's really awesome.
Even the sound mix on the music made it sound more like 1970s-ish. I thought that was good. Yeah, I mean the gag and the way it played out didn't really work for me.
No.
And I didn't really feel like this was a tribute to the animated series.
No,
it had nothing to do with the animated series, but except very superficially.
Right. I mean, essentially, they're just using the animated series style animation and doing mediocre comedy sketches.
Yes.
Which wasn't quite what I was hoping for. That's kind of the impression I got leading up to it. I think I mentioned last week that I wasn't super optimistic. And I'm not that familiar with Casper Kelly, but I don't know. I mean, any other thoughts on that first one?
If they had
that was
stopped
to skin a cat.
Yeah, if they had
Okay.
stopped with Maress and moved on to something else,
Yeah.
that bit would have been okay.
I mean, it's basically a ham-fisted spoof of cancel culture,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
and it just doesn't work. It's
No,
just
it doesn't work in Star Trek.
it's just
Mm-mm.
dumb. Yeah,
Yeah.
that especially doesn't work in Star Trek.
Save that for like Family Guy or SpongeBob.
Yeah, I mean, it's pushing that narrative that you've got this mediocre white guy who just can't get anything done because everything he says, someone magically appears to be offended by it. And that's
Right.
just not the way the world works.
No.
You
No.
know?
And especially in the Star Trek world.
Right. Yeah, I feel like, for one, if a human used an idiom that was offensive, I think during a pitch battle when our lives on the line, maybe not be the time that they would stop doing their jobs and talk about it. But also, I mean, it got increasingly absurd.
Yes.
I mean, and we know these aren't. They said in the commercial that these are definitely not canon.
Right.
And I mean, we're saying all this. I mean, humor is subjective. I'm sure there are some folks who loved it and some folks who didn't, and some folks who were like different parts of it than what I did, and that's fine. I mean, we're just giving our opinions.
No, it's not fine. The people who liked it are wrong.
I heard you say that.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't find it. I didn't laugh at that one at all. I just didn't find, and like you said, humor is subjective, and you can have slapstick humor. I mean, you know, I still love the Three Stooges and Laurel and Hardy and stuff like that, but this just, you're right, it just didn't work. As soon as he did the skin a cat thing and they kept on going, I just looked at it, you know, it just didn't do much for me.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's move on to the holiday party one.
I like that one a little better, but
It started out okay.
Yeah.
And then he showed the first blooper. And I was like, nope, that went sideways. This is not going to be good.
Right.
And it was not.
Yeah, it was just, I don't know, kind of cynical. And I don't know. It didn't really do it for me. And I spend quite a bit of time writing comedy routines that we do on stage, and a lot of those are Star Trek related. So I know it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah. But you're doing it for actual Star Trek guys, so
yeah, I mean,
doing it for a puppet spoof show.
That's the thing that gets me is anybody can do a Star Trek spoof or a Star Trek comedy sketch. We do it all the time. But the only people in the world that can do real Star Trek is Paramount. So I wish that they would put their efforts into doing real Star Trek when they have the opportunity, and leave the spoofs and the sketches and the comedy routines to everybody else.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm sure SNL would love to do something like that.
Who?
SNL.
They do Star Trek things.
Yeah. Like take that idea to SNL. I'll do it. That's fine.
Or Robot Chicken.
Yeah.
I'm sure they've
done plenty.
I mean, it doesn't bother me that this is a spoof and it came from Paramount. I just wanted it to be well done, and you would think Paramount could have afforded to. I mean, there's certainly people who've been involved with Star Trek in the past, people who are known to be enthusiasts of the franchise, and who are also known to be funny, who they could have reached out to make these. You know, the Casper Kelly, I don't know much about him beyond the fact that he apparently made too many cooks, which I think is legitimately brilliant. But he has no connection. He's no previous connection with the franchise that I'm aware of, and you know, they could have gotten. I mean, I'm sure Chris Pine would have been game to work on something like this, or Adam Scott, the actor best known for Parks and Recreation, who also had a bit part in, I think, one of the Star Trek movies. I'm just really throwing out names almost at random here.
Right.
But
well, I mean, if they needed somebody who is funny, knows how to do funny cartoons and do good Star Trek, and they've got Mike McMahon on the payroll.
Yeah.
Sure.
You know, maybe reach out to some or all of the writers that are working there, because I feel like they're doing it more successfully. I mean, that's the interesting thing to me is, I mean, we've all talked about Lower Decks plenty, and I think we've all agreed that it's good Star Trek. It's funny. I mean, so why is Lower Deck succeeding and then Very Short Treks, in my opinion, not? Anybody have any thoughts about that?
Because they're trying very hard to not be Star Trek, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree, and I think in the same way, it's a very small microcosm of sometimes it's wrong with some of the new Trek, which I know I've complained about a billion times, which is you feel that they come in to do the idea they want to do, not the idea that feels organic to Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to tell a really goofy, borderline, what's the word, a gallows humor series of jokes. But I don't care what stage of his emotional and social development Spock is in, he would know that wasn't funny to humans.
Yeah.
And I just never bought it. I mean, humor is a really subjective thing, like Vandy Beth said. But basically saying, oh, look at the scene of awesome suffering, but they didn't die. Is this funny? He knows better than that. Not to mention he was raised by a human mother. So I just never bought the premise. It's kind of like in the, I forget which Star Trek movie it was, and I should know this. What's the one where they commissioned the new ship? Was that actually, was that Generations?
Yeah, you thinking about when they're on the ship and Data pushes someone in?
Yeah, and I just thought
I still thought that what Data did was funny.
It was funny. It was hilarious.
But
everyone's like, that's not funny, Data. Like, well, that's exactly what you guys just did.
But I felt after 30 years around human, okay, Charles, do not let us get off track. But I felt that after 30 years around human, Data would at least know that just pushing a woman into the water isn't funny. And so I didn't buy the joke. And on this one, I'm just looking at the whole time is Spock is not that incredibly clueless. Maybe he doesn't get humor, but you know what is not funny. And so I just didn't buy it. And it was almost like Charles, back to your thing about being in some club or restaurant 2 a.m. It's like that comedian who's bombing. And you know how comedians bomb and sometimes they actually start talking louder and faster as if that's going to make the jokes better.
I know. How do you know that feeling?
It was just one after one, and I just the whole time I was groaning, and I thought, man, this is just not funny. It's just not funny.
No,
it didn't work.
Yeah. All right, let's grab some comments.
All right.
All right. Dan, I'm gonna have to pick and choose here because you got a whole bunch of them. So Dan says, I'm loving Very Short Treks. It's my favorite of all the Trek series, which have been released since 2017.
Wow.
High praise.
High praise and minority opinion. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, no. Elaine says, like I said on the EST page, I'm not saying the second one was good, but I preferred it to the first one. That was what you said exactly too. Like, well, it wasn't as bad as the first one.
Yes, like when we finished watching it, I was like,
I heard a lot from different people.
Yep.
Like, well, it wasn't as bad as the first one. Well, I guess that's a good way to do a show. Just make your first episode really bad, and then
that's what we call damning with faint praise.
Yeah, a root canal is not as bad as decapitation either.
Or it's what my parents used to call the left-handed compliment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Matt says, I was hoping for something using the style of the animated series, witty and humorous, but still close enough to Trek to be canon.
Agreed.
Yeah, and that's like when Gazelle Automations did their little tributes to the animated series, and they took the audio of several different like scenes from like Next Generation, Voyager, and like for instance the Borg one. They did Best of Both Worlds, the Borg attack and Picard being abducted, and I mean frankly I thought that was funnier than these are.
Yeah.
Just because
they were.
Seeing them in the animated series style is just the
Hilarious.
Borg beam in and they're wearing purple. And but it's it's not laughing at it, it's laughing like
because that's how it would have looked if they would have animated it.
It's like a laughing out of love because I like the animated series and then the Enterprise flies by and then you have the big da-dan and then the Borg ship flies by after them and you know I thought that was more naturally funny, but they were playing it straight. They weren't acting like the Borg didn't slip on a banana peel or there wasn't a guy mopping the Enterprise floor with a mop and the Borg slipped and hit themselves in the nuts. You know, like just them,
oh my god,
just them beaming in and taking Picard, and just even the way he went, and I laughed more watching that, but not laughing at it, not laughing. They weren't trying to make jokes. They just but they did it deliberately. They knew that I was going to laugh at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think the guy who made these was believed he was doing what Matt is saying here. Because we've got the escalation. It starts with the cut to Maress, and that's, she's a cat. He just used a cat idiom. And then they escalate from that to other aliens that we couldn't see in live action, with the guy with the screw head and the person whose face was twisted knickers. And it, he clearly, the guy who made that thought that just going to taking a facet of the original animated series and then just going to the extreme absurd with it was what would be funny. And he was just wrong.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's 3 more to go, right? Well, did I read there were 5?
Yeah, I think we have 3 left to go. So
Yeah. Okay.
Now, did anybody notice that Saru was wearing a 32nd century uniform in the flashback footage from the Discovery
He was wearing a
pilot?
different uniform from all the other people.
Yeah, he was wearing the red future uniform. Now, maybe that's a deliberate gag that they had him in the wrong uniform, but
yeah, that's funny.
No, it's just like, why is he in there?
Right.
I mean, give one of the background characters the wrong sleeve color. Come on.
Yeah, that'd be funny.
That would be funny.
That would have been funny, right?
Yeah.
The critiques and the takedowns of the short tracks are funnier than the short tracks were.
All right. So Dan says it's not well done. It's terrifically done. Matt says short treks were brilliant, and an animated inspired take on this could have been very good. And there he's talking about the original short treks.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean,
I
would have.
I love almost all of the short treks.
Yeah. I mean, I think you could have animated different things that we never saw in Star Trek and did it with an animated series style, and it could be funny and not stray too far from canon. And I think that could work and be a good, and like they may have intended, it would have been a good tribute, I think, to the animated series.
Right.
Let's see. Dan says Mike McMahon isn't really funny, in my humble opinion. He's got a better grasp on storytelling than humor, and I disagree with that.
I disagree very
Lower Decks
strongly.
is very funny, and I think it's very good Star Trek. And one thing I noticed about Lower Decks is that they tend not to go for the cynical humor; they tend to go for sweet humor.
Yeah.
So there will be humor out of things like how positive everyone is.
Yeah.
Like things like that.
I'm too excited. I'm too loud. Okay,
Right.
I need to go away.
I don't know what you said, but I probably agree.
Exactly.
It was too high pitched. I couldn't hear you.
I was Rutherford on Deep Space Nine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that's. You may have any closing thoughts about the very short treks?
Looking forward to the rest.
Disappointing.
Yeah.
Disappointing.
Well, let's talk about Lower Decks then.
Yeah.
Yay!
In the Cradle of Vexilon.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I loved this episode.
Me too.
There are so many nice references, and that's one of the things I love about Deep Space Nine is they do references and they use them well. It's not like,
You
hey,
mean Lower
this
Decks?
thing. That's what I meant. Yes. What did I just say?
You said Deep Space Nine.
Deep Space Nine was on my brain.
Yeah.
But they use the references so well, and they don't shove it in your face. They're just like, hey, this thing, because we're also fans of this thing, because this happened in the past, and we're fans of the past.
Yeah. And it's a good twist that you have a civilization that they've got one of those ancient computers that runs the planet. It's not a planet, it's a mega structure.
Yeah.
But it's going fine. It's nice. It's not maniacal. And they're just carrying on. But it hasn't been updated in thousands of years.
I think, well, it was something weird, like 1,000,000 years and 6 days or something crazy like
right.
that. It was, I agree with you. And I thought one thing that caught my eye very interestingly was the megastructure wasn't a Dyson sphere, but it was a ring.
Right.
And
Ring world.
Yes, exactly. Ring world.
It's a lowercase r ring world.
Yes, which also, by the way, of course, the Ring World novels had Kazinti in them. Little thing. And the reason I thought that was cool is because one of the most common misconceptions in science and science fiction is the Dyson sphere. Dr. Dyson did not propose a sphere. He proposed a ring just like that. Others talked about the sphere, and then it became attributed to him. But that his original proposal was what we saw on the show, an actual ring around the sun. So I thought that was pretty cool.
So do you think these folks set out to build a sphere and then got like the ring done and we're like, that's good enough?
I think they realized that, hey, it's stupid to do an entire sphere. Let's just do a ring.
Right.
because
Yeah.
it makes more sense.
Yeah.
And the material would be, good God. I mean, it's already almost impossible to do. But
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
talked about that in the Ring World books, that a ring is sufficient enough, and then it has gravity, and so you literally build walls on the side of the ring and make them just high enough where the atmosphere doesn't leak out. You're good. So I thought that was cool. And I even love little touches. And we talk about lower decks, and like what you guys were just saying, it's funny you differentiate that from short tracks. The very short tracks is you can be funny and whatever and still get the details right. Because if you looked in the distance, you saw the ring up into the sky. You saw the curve of the ring up into the sky as well, which I thought was pretty cool. So I thought that was really nice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good.
They did. I mean, I like that we saw a Kazin in this episode, and Kazin, of course, were established as part of the franchise in the original animated series. But
Yeah.
more importantly, the Kazin were created by Larry Niven, who also wrote the Ringworld books.
Right.
So I thought that was a visual shout out to. Yes, we know Larry Niven created the first Ringworld, and this is also a Ringworld. That was, I thought that was a really nice touch and subtle.
Yeah.
I do think they didn't adequately convey just the scale of a structure like this.
Right.
You know, we saw some views of the inner surface of the ring, but they didn't really convey the fact that the width of that ring would be at least thousands of times the width of the Earth.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's hard though to show that kind of a scale.
True.
But I think just as a nerd, it's just cool to see that in Star Trek.
Yeah.
And I thought, what a great. I mean, if you're gonna have I mean, there's been a lot of like ancient computers that are like controlling planets and things. But if this is an entirely artificial environment, it makes sense that there would be something. Controlling it.
Making sure the environmenting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let me grab some comments real quick. All right, here we go. We got Matt said, "I'm interested in their society. With the perfect weather, they could succeed as a resort destination a la Ryza." True. Dan said, "I definitely think they shoved the Easter eggs in your face, and presumably you were joking about how positive everyone is." Nope. Elaine says, "I love that their mistake sculptures were same as the good ones."
Yeah.
Right. I love that Ransom has like artistic opinions.
Yes.
Yes. That was fantastic.
Amateurish.
Yes.
Right. And then Dan pointed out that the Kazin is actually given a name here, which is Tyler.
Oh,
And that's
Oh, I missed that.
I don't think that's correct. I think Merp was the Kazin.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
So which one was
Go back and
Tyler? Was
check
Tyler
that.
the guy with the green face then?
I think so.
Okay. Interesting.
And Charles, what you said earlier, I thought was really cool, because the world computer that goes nuts and takes over is a trope in Star Trek. It's a cliche. And so I agreed that it was brilliant that wasn't the problem. As a matter of fact, when they beamed down, the first thing the captain said was, "It's not trying to subjugate anyone." No. Why would you think that?
Right. Like, we got a whole lab of them back on Earth.
Yeah, so that was great. It wasn't Vol, it wasn't Landru, it wasn't the Oracle from the World is Hollow, I've Touched the Sky. And so that was so cool. And as you said, it was really, and then also somebody who works in IT, and all of us nowadays have computer experience. I love the way it happened. In the IT world, literally the joke is you never want to hear an IT person go, "Oh, that shouldn't have happened." And that's what happened. Or the old, "Oh, it'll take only a second, it'll be fine." And then I've had these conversations and they're like, "Wait, is it supposed to reboot? What, wasn't supposed to?" And then and how many people have not loaded software and gotten that Microsoft bar freeze or whatever bar freeze? So I loved all that stuff. That was great.
It was as simple. It seems like every time you have to upgrade to a new version of something, it works.
That's what I was thinking. Yes.
Yeah, it just works less than it did before.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like all of our software at work, every time we have to upgrade it, we have fewer features than we used to have. And it's less reliable. But I don't think that Captain Freeman should have taken it upon herself to upgrade this planetary system.
Nope.
That's
She
Ransom
doesn't have a
said.
history of engineering even.
Yeah.
But she minored in archaic technology at the academy, and that's a thing.
That means she took a class or two.
That's a minor. That's more than just a couple of classes.
I thought it was interesting that she said that, and she also got possessed by a mask last season.
Yeah.
Good point. Good
Yeah.
point. Yeah, I thought that was. Yeah, and so again, it was insane, but it was funny. And look, I continue to be amazed that Lower Decks keeps balancing the line between absurd and truly funny, and homage to Trek, and fan service / Easter eggs. And I did not expect them to go this many years and keep pulling it off. But to me, they keep pulling it off all the time. It's amazing. I'm impressed with the show continually.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a good twist on an old Star Trek trope.
Yeah.
And they done in a new way that Star Trek really hadn't really done before, which is
Yeah.
interesting. And it's a way that's relatable to us. You know?
Yeah.
And well, at the same time, we had the storyline going on with Boimler leading his first away team mission.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Right. I thought it was actually pretty relatable too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
I found
Yes.
myself doing that. Just as a manager, like, well, here, I'll just do it.
Mhm.
Just give it here. I'll show you.
Yeah.
You know.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, people don't learn that way.
Mm-mm. But what I like about it, and what you were saying, Charles, about this being a positive show, and and a kind of a gentle show in a lot of ways, it wasn't because he 100% thought that they were incompetent. What you find out is he was really concerned about his people.
Right.
At the end of the day, he really is. And I also found something what I do like about the growth is I like that. Forgive me, what's the Vulcan's name?
T'Len.
T'Len, I like what they're doing with this. Is not a joke. Where she said, "I've read your mission reports. I've read this and that," and people are literally saying he deserved this position. So it's not like it's gonna be this weird thing where they get demoted or this and that. I love that growth. That they really believe he has the stuff, and so I love that he was just concerned about his people, and he's got to learn to let go.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a good point, because it could have easily had been this moron got promoted and shouldn't have been promoted.
Right.
But no, I mean, the Boimler's earned it.
Yeah.
Whether he feels that way or not. And sometimes, your superiors can see things in you that you don't see in yourself. Or once you actually are responsible for these people on this away mission, it feels different than you thought it would.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is something that people have to learn as they grow. And I like that we're getting that kind of growth out of these characters.
Agree.
So in this 22-minute story, we had an A plot, a B plot, and a C plot.
Right.
And they were all great.
Right.
Yes.
So in the C plot, our folks they thought they were being hazed.
Yeah.
Mariner and Tindy and Rutherford, they were having to scan all the isolinear chips by hand in this big thing. So what do we think about that storyline?
I thought it turned out the way it looked like it was going. It looked like it was actually hazing. Then it looked like it wasn't hazing. But then it turns out it was hazing. So I really enjoyed them trying to fix it at the last minute.
That would be a really dangerous single point of failure if only one of those chips going bad
Thank you.
could destroy the ship.
I don't think that was actually the case. I think he just said that to get them to freak out.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with y'all, because I remember from TNG that even the episode, oh my gosh, I forget. I forget the name of it. It was the one with the Iconian spear infected the Enterprise with the virus that caused the Enterprise to start malfunctioning. Y'all know who I'm talking about?
I remember that happening, but go ahead.
Yeah, Vandy Beth, that's the one where they discover the sister ship, the Yamato, and it blows up, and then that's the race of people with the portal. You could walk through and be anywhere in the galaxy.
Well, I know the Iconians had the gateways, but I don't know this thing about a sphere.
That was the episode. It was a probe that came, and the probe basically infected the Enterprise. The reason I say all that stuff and answer your question, Veronica, is in the episode, Geordi said that the warp field, or the antimatter, has something like 3 separate independent backup systems. One goes and another one comes on, and another one comes on, another one. So to your point, I think they again did it brilliantly, playing out the joke. Because when he said that one ship in that room full of like 1 billion chips could make the ship like blow up or whatever, I was like, are they serious? Do I just let go the reality because it's a comedy cartoon, or are they punking them? And I kept going back and forth too. I'm like, wait, like you said, Vandy Beth, like, that's bull. There's no way there's a single, but they said it's a single point of favor. Then at the end, they're in the bar, like, we got him. That was great.
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I mean, at first, I didn't really care for the double twist because it does seem kind of cynical. I kind of liked when it was, he had a more positive reason, I guess, that he, for the things that he was doing. He wasn't just being a jerk.
I felt
Ultimately,
the same way.
He was just being a jerk. Which, I mean, there are people who are just jerks on Star Trek, which that happens. He'll probably be an admiral one day. But yeah, that felt like going a little more cynical there at the end, and especially with Ransom being sort of in on it. Maybe it's just a thing because they're new lieutenants and they feel like they're hazing them. But I did kind of like that. Like Rutherford didn't even know what hazing was.
Yeah.
He's like, "What are you talking about? What's that?" Which is good because let people do their jobs.
Yeah.
Well, Charles, then I'm sorry. Go ahead, Veronica.
I wish they would have he would have had more time in the Move Along Home.
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
Before we get into the Move Along Home box, let me catch up with some comments again because
all right.
Sorry, everybody.
So, guys, hazing, good or no? Yay or nay for hazing?
Dan commented, "How do you reconcile them talking about how awful humanity is if they're supposedly positive all the time?" And I don't think they talk a lot about how awful humanity is. There are people on Star Trek who are just jerks. Like we're just talking about dude who was giving them these orders. But I think Lower Decks skews back towards sweetness a lot. And, it turned a little more cynical here on this one at the end for that one character. But I mean, ultimately, I think that they more often than not, it's a very sweet show and a very positive and uplifting show. And I think
occasionally Mariner might be like, "Oh yeah, humans are terrible," but that I don't feel like that's part of the show. I feel like that's
a character point of view.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between a character's point of view and a show's point of view.
Yeah.
Right.
You can have a character on the show say anything they is natural for that character, but the show's point of view, I don't think is a cynical show.
Yeah.
All right. So Matt says, and boy, Boimler needs to learn to delegate. Yes, he does. That's true.
No kidding.
That's the point, though. That was what he was learning. Dan does believe that the Kazin's name was Tyler, and I don't have a dog in this race.
I say Bubba.
Dan, he had a comment, but I'm not. It's been a bit while. I don't know what he's referring to now. Captain Matt says Captain Freeman forgot the rule. You always perform a backup before doing an update.
Yep.
Amen, Matt. Of course, we all thought about that. Yeah. Where's the backup?
Okay, Dan says, I've seen quite a few people online getting frustrated with the fact that Freeman keeps getting portrayed as fallible, but I don't mind that. Yeah, I don't mind her being fallible. Freeman does have a tendency to blunder a bit.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's why she's captain of Cerritos and not captain of the Galaxy class ship.
Yeah, and she's trying to pretend she is captain of a Galaxy class ship and pretend that she's important.
Yeah, but I think all Star Trek captains at some point stick themselves in it, and have to get rescued or the ship gets into a bad way,
But she also has a lot of times when she's like, "Hey, this is how the thing goes," and she's right.
And I think the thing is, I think Captain Freeman sometimes needs to get out of her own way. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't be surprised if by series end, whenever that is, she does go to first contact. She goes up in rank as a captain.
That'd be awesome.
So yeah, I'm like you. I don't mind that. Charles, I really wonder then, therefore, do you think that the Starfleet Academy series won't or shouldn't have hazing?
I don't know.
I really hope it doesn't.
Well, I mean, I don't have a strong opinion about that, I guess. Especially if it's like, college age folks.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they will. There's going to be drama. There's going to be conflict,
There'll be a dude like Finnegan with a pail of water on a half-open door.
It's quite a trick on the sliding doors, too. You got to be good.
I always wondered about that.
It would be an anti-grav bucket.
There you go.
Oh, cool. There you go.
Matt says, I'm intrigued by Talin's rank. Provisional second lieutenant.
That's not what she is.
Okay.
She's a provisional lieutenant junior grade.
Okay.
Second lieutenant is an Army or a Marines rank, and Starfleet obviously uses naval ranks.
Right.
But I also have been wondering why she's a provisional lieutenant junior grade. I assume that's because she's not actually a member of Starfleet.
Right. I think she has a rank in the same way that the Maquis on Voyager had ranks, because she has a very similar.
I noticed that, but they didn't. To my knowledge, they haven't explained that.
Right. Yeah, my guess is that she never went to Starfleet Academy, and so she's sort of like a obviously she's provisional, but I think they just she transferred into Starfleet rather than coming up through the ranks.
Very much like T'Pol in Enterprise, and Kira Nerys in Deep Space Nine, who was officially not Starfleet, and T'Pol was officially not Starfleet.
Yeah.
So
we have seen folks though. Like I don't believe Michael Burnham ever went to Starfleet Academy, did she? I think she did. I thought she went from the Science Academy, and then Georgiou picked her up, and then
she was turned down by the Science Academy because Sarek wanted Spock to go, so they told him not to take her.
Yeah, I remember that, but I remember.
And so she went to Starfleet Academy instead.
Yeah, and then Spock also went to Starfleet.
Okay.
Speaking of T'Lyn, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Vandy Beth.
Yeah, well, I just to close the loop on this, T'Pol, Keith, T'Pol was not a member of whatever uniformed service Enterprise's personnel were part of, because the Federation didn't exist then. But in the time of Lower Decks, the Vulcans and the humans are both part of the Federation, and Starfleet is staffed by both of them. So we know T'Lyn came from some Vulcan type of organization, but that should have also been Starfleet.
Yeah, when Enterprise, Starfleet did exist, but the Federation didn't exist. And so T'Pol was part of the Vulcan Defense Forces? Is that what it was called?
Maybe, but that's not important now.
Right.
I mean, we're talking about T'Lyn. Who?
Sorry, I was looking over the comments real quick.
Yeah, okay.
Everyone stop talking. Yeah, Dan says provisional lieutenant junior grade, a gold bar and a black bar. Dan says, with the C plot, I flashed back to Wesley in The Naked Now. I had the same thought.
I hadn't thought about that.
Chips.
Oh, right.
Yeah, where they pulled them out, and the ship doesn't work anymore because all the chips are out. Yeah, I mean, that's sort of a throwback to the way Next Gen used technology. And they do a lot now on the show of sort of bringing it up to speed on the way, like the pads work more like our modern technology does and so forth. But I don't mind that. I don't mind a little throwback. It is kind of weird they have I mean, it was funny, but you haven't done the second layer, and the whole thing slides. And that would be a tedious job to scan all those chips.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do like the way Tendi took it over and she was in the Old West.
Right. Yeah. I hope she's very accurate, because
yes.
Don't miss one. But yeah, on the whole, I thought this was a really fun episode. I thought it was good. It was a lot of good character movement for the characters. Oh, we never really talked about the Wadi box, the Alan Moraine box. How do we feel about revisiting?
I had no memory of that. So
that was funny. That's from an episode I kind of detest, that the box in this episode was funny. But there was a lot of things in that anomaly storage room. For some reason, freaking Nomad was in there, which makes no sense, because Nomad blew himself up. So I'm not sure what that was all about. And then did you notice up on the shelf, it looked like the Romulan cloaking device, or was it M4 from Requiem for Methuselah, because the same parts were used for the cloaking device, Nomad, and M4 in the original series. Yeah, seriously. I think it was the cloaking device, because it had Nomad's head and a globe on the bottom, and that was the cloaking device. That was up on the shelf.
Wow.
And then there was and Charles, you probably know this, there was the axe, the big battle axe that they used in Amok Time.
The Lirpa.
Yeah. And was that the sword of Kahless? Was that what that bat was supposed
to
be?
I assume that had to have been the sword of Kahless.
I saw that there was a batleth, but I didn't realize it was that one.
Which was chucked into space at the end of that Deep Space Nine episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate that.
Maybe they found it.
Looks like they did.
Yeah.
Call Kronos.
That was pretty good.
Tell them we found the sword.
Right. Yeah, or one of the ensigns can grab it and go be the emperor now.
God, that was so. That was so crazy. And I did love T'Lyn I loved T'Lyn's chemistry with Boimler, because he was basically being hyperactive and she was being Vulcan, like when he talked about whatever, and she said that the percentage of instances who get under new lieutenant commanders who die is pretty high. And she said it so matter-of-factly.
Yeah. Tylen's hilarious.
Yes.
She is.
Tylen, everything she said was killing me in this episode.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, it is a volcano or whatever she said.
Yeah. Yeah, she's really good. Again, another surprise character, and a Vulcan, which could be throwaway and kind of cliched, is somehow working.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was good. Does anyone have any closing thoughts before we wrap it up?
Lower Decks continues to surprise me with how I haven't disliked a single episode yet. I like some better than others, but I haven't disliked a single one. That's a super high rate.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's very consistent.
Yeah.
I just want this isn't about the specific episode, but I have a miscellaneous comment about Lower Decks that I don't know if I've brought it up before, but I need to get it off my chest. It bugs the design of the Cerritos bugs the heck out of me, because you would have to go through one of the nacelles to get to the engineering hull, unless they have a permanent transporter line set up from the primary hull to the engineering hull. But then you're using the transporter for routine intra-ship beaming, which I think is never a good idea. So,
yeah, my thought is there would have to be a turbo shaft through the strut, but then there's sort of a big cowling around they have that sort of boxy area around the nacelle. So maybe there's the nacelle, and then you have an outer layer where a turbo shaft could run.
maybe
I'm trying.
I can't picture the Cerritos well enough to remember what it looks like. Sorry.
It's
Surprise.
the module. You've got the two nacelles at the bottom connected by a strut, and right between those nacelles where the warp fields are generated is basically living quarters. And it's kind of like, how do you get down there, and why the heck would you want to live down there in the first place?
Right.
I picture ring devices like in Stargate.
Okay. Those are transporters, though.
Yeah, you're right. You have to transport.
All right.
And the other thing I want to bring up, which is about this episode, is I loved when Mariner was keeping Dirk distracted. They were talking about jazz, and we got a long sequence where everyone's basically busting on jazz, which I think is always in order.
And then when she was like, "But what about this?" And he's like, "I have to talk some more."
I want to hear some Tellurite slop jazz now.
The quote that I wrote down is, "Yeah, it sounds wet, and that is what I like. Please continue."
Ew.
That's funny. All right. Well, Vandy Beth, you host a wonderful podcast about comedy and science fiction. You want to tell folks where they can find that?
Yeah, it's called Jettison Pod, which is an extremely obscure in-joke about Star Trek that I would hope everyone listening to Earth Station Trek would recognize. And it is the podcast about comedy in science fiction. It is currently bi-weekly. We hope to go back to weekly in the not too distant future. But our most recent episode dropped just this week. And Charles, you were one of my guests on it. Another guest was my friend Elon. And we talked about Those Old Scientists episode of Strange New Worlds. So we're having a lot of fun. We don't only talk about Star Trek. If it's science fiction and it's funny, then it is within our bailiwick. And I think we're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, it's great. It's a fun podcast.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Where else do people find you?
At open mics and other comedy shows around the Atlanta area.
Okay.
And on Facebook and all your other fine social media products.
And how about you, Keith?
You can find me on X and Facebook, primarily the ESO Network Facebook groups. And real quick thing from the show I forgot to mention. I love the subtle dig at McCoy, where the doctor says, "Holy, you know what? I didn't know that would work." And then she goes 30 cc's of whatever the heck that was that brought formula back to life. Because there was always the joke that McCoy always had the chemical that he needed in his little bitty kit for every
Right.
episode. So I love
Right.
that.
That's awesome.
Yep.
All right, Veronica, where can people find more of you?
More of me specifically, Dabo Woman on TikTok and Instagram. I am doing all kinds of just like fun little videos, mostly about Star Trek. Some of them feature my adorable dog Muppet, and sometimes they're the random TikTok videos that are just like little filters and stuff. But I'm having fun on there. Look for Dabo Woman. My username is Dabo Woman 8. And you can also find me and Chuck a little bit on Dabo Woman on Facebook. It's our more adult side of our puppetry stuff, which tends to be mostly me and a puppet, because Chuck's playing the puppet and I'm playing the fun woman. So it's primarily me, but it's also Chuck. So it's a offshoot of
Felt Nerdy.
Felt Nerdy.
Yep. So check out Felt Nerdy. We've launched our YouTube. We've got a few videos on there now. We're working on getting some more stuff filmed. So we're gonna keep that YouTube going. We're having fun with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, just go to feltnerdy.com, which at this moment directs you to our Facebook page. But we're working on that. We're working on getting the website back up.
Yep.
And
Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys.
That's right. And do you have a closing for us this week?
Every single week.
I know. I've asked you every podcast.
Every podcast.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm ready.
It's
Sometimes I'm not.
Just go with what you got.
Meow.
Okay.
I don't know. That's okay.
Well, thank you for joining us, everybody. Join us Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. We go live talking about Star Trek. And then you can, if you missed the live show, you can watch it after the fact on YouTube, add your comments anyway. And you can find us on any of your podcasting platforms. And thank you guys for joining us in the comments.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Everybody have a
Veronica, you
good
could
night.
have gone with whoopsie. Yeah.